Would you do this for your sister? I thought yes, until everything gets out of control. It all started on any night. I was on the couch, good, stirring my cell phone, when my sister sat next to me with that weird look. Do you know when someone wants to ask you a favor, but are you ashamed? Faye, can I ask you something crazy? I laughed. My sister has always been full of crazy ideas, but nothing prepared me for what she said later. I want you to test my boyfriend. My face was shock. What do you mean, test? I want to see if he really loves me. You are beautiful, sensual. I want you to try to seduce him. If he resists, I know he really loves me. I kept looking at her, not believing. My own sister was asking me to give up her boyfriend? It was a joke, right? But it wasn't. You're crazy. I won't do that. Ah, Faye, just a little flirt. Nothing else. This is crazy. What if I pay you? I arched my eyebrow. Now she had my attention. How much? Enough for you to have fun. I should have refused, right? But the truth is that a part of me was curious. Would he resist me? And that's when the game started. The next day, my sister had already armed everything. According to her, it was just a casual meeting, a dinner among friends. Only I knew that dinner had a greater purpose. I arrived at the restaurant first. I chose a dress that marked the body well. Not vulgar, but enough to draw attention. My plan was simple, to be irresistible without looking obvious. When he arrived, I noticed the way he looked at me. 1 second more than it should. A look that traveled my body before settling on my face. I sat on his side, very close, just to feel the reaction. I talked about my day, smiles more than usual, lightly touched his arm when he laughed. Small gestures that men always realize. He moved his chair, straightened his posture, looked discreetly to my mouth. Then it's time for the real test. I grabbed his fork on purpose and took it to his mouth, looking straight into his eyes as I cleaned the tip with my lips. A simple gesture that made it swallow dry. My sister had not yet arrived, and the mood was already warming. He looked away, tried to keep the composure, but I knew the game was working. My sister finally arrived at the restaurant, and dinner followed as if nothing is happening, but I saw in his eyes that something had changed. In the following days, I started playing more with this situation. I tested his boundaries, always in the almost. A look, a provocation, a touch unintentionally. He looked increasingly nervous, near me, until one night, everything collapsed. We were at a party at a friend's house, and my sister had to leave before. He stayed, me too. I went to get a drink from the kitchen, and suddenly he was there. Just the two of us. The muffled atmosphere, the loud music in the next room. I was leaning against the sink, spinning the glass between my fingers, pretending disinterest. But he approached, very close. His smell hit me before the touch. The arm went around my waist. The gaze got stuck in mine. The silence was heavy, loaded with intention. You're playing with me, right? His voice came low, hoarse. I smiled in the corner. Do you think? He didn't answer. It just looked at me like that says it all. So it happened. It was fast, but intense. A spark that became a fire. His mouth found mine as if he were waiting for it for days. One hand squeezed my waist. The other held my back of my neck. The kiss started urgently and was slowing down, as if we wanted to extend every second. And at that moment, I knew. The game had stopped being a test. Now it was real. After that night, everything changed. The kiss should have been a mistake, something to be forgotten. But it wasn't. The truth is that we didn't want to forget. We started to meet by chance. Or maybe it wasn't that chance. Small moments, exchanges of glances, touches that lasted a second more than they should. He sent me messages. Nothing compromising, but I knew what was behind each word. It was a fine line between provocation and total surrender. And me, I loved it. The game became more intense. I tested it again, this time at home, when my sister was not. I passed him, in a towel, leaving the shower, pretending not to realize the way he looked at me. He looked away, tried to control himself, but I saw when his breathing failed for a second. The tension only increased. We were playing with fire. The next day, he appeared in my room. He said he needed to talk to me. I stood, looking at him, waiting. He took a deep breath, ran his hand through his hair, and finally let go of what was stuck in his throat. That needs to stop. But he himself didn't believe what he said, because when I tried to pass him to leave, it was he who held my arm. You like it? Don't you like it? My heart fired. I should deny. pretend nothing was happening. But instead, I held his gaze and let the silence respond for me. We knew it was surpassing all the limits. But at the same time, none of us wanted to stop. The guilt began to weigh. But the attraction was even stronger. And by now, I already knew. It was a matter of time until it happens again. We knew we shouldn't. But at that moment, there was no more right or wrong. That night my sister slept outside. He stayed at home. And me? I was in my room, lying down, trying to ignore the heat in the body and the memory of his touch. Then I heard steps in the hallway, the noise of the door opening. He entered without saying anything, without hesitation. I closed my eyes for a second, trying to ignore electricity in the air. But then he sat on the edge of the bed, his fingers brushing lightly on my discovered leg. I tried, but I can't pretend anymore. My breath arrested in the chest. So don't pretend. He ran a hand over his hair, as if fighting his own desire. But his eyes already said everything. I slowly slipped to him, letting the silence speak louder. The first touch was soft, almost hesitant. A test. One last warning that there was still time to go back. But no one wanted to go back. When our mouths met again, it was different. I was no longer to blame. I had no resistance anymore. It was intense, hungry, desperate, as if all the desire contained therein had exploded at once. My hand slid down his shoulders, feeling every tense muscle of those who had been holding it too long. The heat grew, the clothes disappeared, the limits ceased to exist. That night, the game is over, and the betrayal really began. The next day I still felt the hot body. The taste was still in my mouth. But now, along with pleasure, something new came, fear. My sister came home as if nothing had happened, but for some reason, her gaze took a little more about me, as if something was different. I was silent, just watching. In the following days, I tried to act normal, but I realized that she started studying me. Little things, casual questions about her boyfriend, looks that lasted a second more. The worst was when she commented on breakfast. I don't know, he's weird with me lately. It's distracted, as if he had his head elsewhere. My heart jumped, but swallowed dry. It must be your head, I said, shrugging. She said nothing, but her gaze got stuck in me. After that, the test started. Small tricks to try to catch something. She talked about her boyfriend near me just to see my reaction. He pretended to leave, but he suddenly came back, as if he tried to get something in the act. And the worst, he also started to act strange. Before, I avoided contact with me in front of her. Now it looked nervous. He touched his cell phone all the time, looking away when she spoke. The tension in the house has increased. It was as if we were on a minefield, waiting for the explosion. For a second, I thought she knew. And if I knew, what would you do? The game was getting too dangerous. I should have stopped. But I didn't stop. Adrenaline, forbidden desire, the tension of almost being caught. All of this made it impossible to resist. Until, one night, the inevitable happened. My sister went out to find a friend and he stayed at home. It was enough. As soon as the door knocked, we throw each other, without thinking about anything else. His hand squeezed my waist. My skin burned under the touch. The desire was urgent, almost violent. We were on the living room couch, the bodies stuck, the lips exploring, the heart accelerated. And then we hear the key spinning in the lock. Panic beat like a punch. She had come back before. We separated into a leap. My heart beat so hard that I thought I was going to faint. I ran to my room, closed the door, and tried to breathe. Outside, I heard her voice. "What are you doing here?" Silence. So she insisted, now sharper. "And why are you sweaty?" My throat dried up. He tried to make up any excuse, but I already knew. The way she looked around, her eyes analyzing everything. She had already felt. When she saw my bag thrown on the couch next to his, the silence was unbearable. I didn't need to see your face to know. She knew, and hell was about to start. After that night, nothing more was the same. My sister said nothing, at the moment. Did not shouted, did not cry, did no scene. But that's exactly what made everything even worse. Her silence was a warning. The following days were hell. She didn't look at me anymore. I didn't talk to me unless it was extremely necessary. The mood indoors was so heavy that I felt the air different, loaded, suffocating. When we crossed in the hall, she passed me as if I were invisible. And the worst? Her boyfriend also started acting differently. At first, he tried to contact. He sent messages, asked if I was okay. But soon he realized that this was no longer back. Now he looked confusing, lost, Once, I caught him and my sister arguing softly in the room. Her tone was cold, full of hurt. He was trying to explain himself, but it was obvious that she was not convinced. I didn't know what was worse, her contempt or his regret. Dinner has become unbearable. Before, it was a moment of laughter and conversations. Now nobody said anything. The sound of the cutlery hitting the plate was the only noise that filled the room. She looked at me with an eye, as if waiting for the right time to attack me, and when she finally spoke, it was like a right blow. "Do you have anything to tell me?" My throat dried up. She knew, but I wanted to see me confess. The war was declared, and I knew that her next movement would be the most dangerous. The tension indoors became an unbearable burden. My sister said nothing directly, but everything, in her behavior, shouted. She watched me all the time, not in a wide but subtle, calculating way, as if waiting for the right time to go the boat. Then came the unexpected blow. She threw the cell phone on the table, facing me. The screen showed messages from her with another guy. My stomach rolled. They were not casual conversations. They were intimate messages, fleas, promises, confessions, things she would never say in front of me. My mind tried to sue that. She was cheating too? I looked at her, but there was no regret in her expression. On the contrary, her smile was cold, almost victorious, as if to say, now we're even. The game turned completely. The guilt I carried began to dispose. I was not the only one in this story. I started joining the pieces. Maybe she knew all the time. Perhaps he had suspiciously from the beginning and decided to take revenge in a quiet way. But what about her boyfriend? Did he suspect? Or worse? Was he playing too? Suddenly, nothing more seemed right. The betrayal had ceased to be a secret. Now it was a war of those who deceived who first. And no one would leave this unharmed. After that night, nothing else could be fixed. My sister did not confront me directly. He didn't shouted, didn't cry, didn't throw the blame on me, but the way she looked at me said everything. The house was cold. Each word changed was loaded with irony, resentment. There was no more confidence. There was no longer that complicity of before. And it disappeared. I don't know if you tried to explain to her. I don't even know if they still tried to continue together. What I know is that, after all, he had no place between us. What was left was a heavy silence. They say blood ties are stronger than anything. But is this true? Time has passed, and even without ever being said, we understood that something there would never be as before. I betrayed my sister. She cheated on me too. But could we ever forgive ourselves? Perhaps yes, maybe not. The days turned weeks. The weeks turned months. We talked when it was necessary, but always with that distance that did not exist before. One night we bump into the kitchen. We stayed there in silence, not knowing what to say. For a second, it seemed that a right word could change everything, but none of us managed to say it. She took a glass of water and left without looking back. And there, alone, I realized that sometimes time does not heal everything. The only certainty was that in that story, no one came out.